Hey, we're live. We're live, Mr. Hoehn.
We are live.
Your name is Bill Hoehn, and you're from St. Mary's, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's correct there.
That is correct. Okay, so I got a couple questions for you. Where did you go to elementary school?
I put 3 years in at St. Mary's Parochial, and the rest was at the public high school because the nuns couldn't stand me.
Oh, really? Interesting. After high school, what did you do?
Went to DeVry Tech in Chicago for associate in electronics, and then went to work.
In local factories?
Some local factories. After I was married, we packed up and went to Rochester and went to work for General Dynamics in the Electronics Center. It was after they had purchased Stromberg Carlson Corporation and started a new plant for military at the Bond Clothing building on Goodman Street.
Wow, interesting. But that wasn't your last job.
Oh no, came down here and went to work for Spear for a while, and Carbon City Products, St. Mary's Carbon, out at Stackpole. While I was still in school, I worked for Tommy's place over there, Pure. Got 2.5 years in at Pure, afternoon shift, and then going to school daytimes. So, you know, I had my nose in the factory way back when. After Stackpole, and they moved me around, I had the cane magnet plant for quality. And then I went back to school. I got a BS from Pitt at Bradford with a minor in math. Couldn't beg, borrow, or steal a job, so I went to work for Barnum Transportation, driving tractor trailer over the road.
If I ask Arthur these questions, he'll understand them. If the door's locked,
If you can't lift it, don't pick it up. Is that where
if
you're
the
going?
if the door's locked, don't go in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you can't find it, don't look for it. Does that ring a bell from would have been Airco, right? Or Spears or Airco?
No, I never ran into that. I started in the research department, so I wasn't in production or up in plant 3 or that sort of thing. So I never got exposed to that kind of stuff.
Right. That's interesting. With regard to the fire department, you know a whole lot about the history of the fire department.
A little bit.
And a whole lot about the trains, the railroad industry, correct?
Well, a little bit. I followed it.
What about the rise of carbon and powder metal?
That all came about before my time, when everything really got rocking and rolling. The beginnings of powder metal here came through Reicher, and Reicher got his indoctrination into sintering at Spear Carbon. Reicher was an engineer in the research department in charge of copper graphite brushes. So he learned how to do sintering in reducing atmospheres, and that's what you needed to make bronze bearings. And that's what he started out with.
That's interesting. Is that something like Howard Eynon did? Did he develop a brush for a starter?
Well, you know, he started originally, he was with
National Carbon.
National Carbon, and I guess it was Cleveland.
With my grandfather. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he got in. He was working on searchlight carbons.
Electric arc?
Electric arc.
Okay.
And so then he went with a company in Wellsville that was making that, and this was after the First World War. The electric arc was used in motion picture projecting, which was a really big expanding business at the time. Everything kind of went off of that in terms of where they took their research. But brushes was a natural. But Pure always was interested in mechanical application, more so than the brush application. And so they worked on bearing seals and impregnations, developing materials that would run dry, self-lubricating in high temperatures. That was their main thrust. But they always had a brush operation as well. mainly in smaller brushes, power tools, that sort of thing.
So Spears Airco gave birth to a lot of, based upon the brushes, it gave birth to a lot of what we see in the powder metal industry.
Yeah, in some ways,
Yeah.
where you're dealing with relatively low melting point materials like copper and brass, I mean, that was the beginning of the powder metal industry. It didn't do iron right away. It took a while to learn how to do that.
And, you know, there was die design. You had to have dies. You had to figure out how to compress, mold
Yep.
things,
Yep.
shape it, whatever, and then you had to center it. So there was a lot of commonality. The carbon end of it was taking place at a higher temperatures.
Mhm.
Powder metal was just a natural flow.
Yep.
And
To Dennis's question though, the powder metal as relates to carbon and graphite manufacturing in St. Mary's, none of it was invented here. But the first carbon was manufactured in Spear Carbon, and then Stackpole came along, and as Bill said, with Ben Reicher working at Spear Carbon Company, making carbon graphite brushes. In 1925, he went to management he had what he thought was a better idea for attaching the shunts, the pigtails, the wires that actually attach to the electrical source where the brushes ride, or on the commutator to the motor. Spear at the time was investing in a huge facility in Niagara Falls. This would be about 1930. And the long story short is they agreed that Ben would go off on his own and make brushes with his ideas, carbon graphite brushes with his ideas, and they wouldn't file any suits. The agreement that I understand from my grandfather, whom Ben Reicher worked for, was that they'd let him go. He could make brushes with their own formulations and such, but any improvements in the pigtails, then they could use them without any repercussions back and forth. So once Ben was off on his own, molding carbon and graphite powder with a binder and sintering it into a solid piece, already molding in powdered metals into the brush, and Ben took his brush business as a basis and then started molding metals as powdered metal. That was the birth of the powdered metal industry in St. Mary's in Elk County, because everything spun off from Spear Carbon as far as the carbon graphite, and Ben Reicher going off on his own making carbon graphite brushes, and then saying, hey, I'm molding carbon graphite, we can mold copper and steel and brass and make powder metal.
Turning into a shape.
You mold the powder into a shape and you sinter it. So it wasn't.
Sinter means bake.
It's a heat process.
You're cooking.
What you're actually doing is you're welding the particles together.
Okay.
So where'd he go?
Keep going, Arthur.
So basically, that was your question. Where did the powder metal come from? It came from Ben Reicher going off on his own, and as a natural progression, saying, I'm going to make powder metal parts. And he still made carbon and graphite brushes for a long time. They were known as Keystone Carbon Company, even though over time the carbon graphite brush line became much secondary to the process, to the point that today they make nothing in regard to
even
carbon graphite
At
brushes.
the end, that brush division was sold to Kirkwood out of Cleveland, but it was set up down at Danville, Kentucky, as a standalone operation. And they took a fella from here and put him down there in charge of the plant.
But again, that is the birth of all the powder metal industry in St. Mary's and Elk County. Goes to Ben Reicher leaving Spear Carbon with their blessing and on his own. He started first in Emporium at a facility there. We don't know why. Somebody does. And then within a very short period of time moved to the Ridgeway Road location, where it is today as Keystone Powder Metal Company. There's no carbon graphite manufacturing taking
Yep.
place.
And in the middle of that whole thing after the move, he got in the outs with his brother-in-law, Lancel. And so Lancel took a chunk of what he was working with and moved it over to St. Mary's Carbon. And
Yeah, Ben's wife was a Lancel.
yeah, well, yeah.
That's why he said brother-in-law.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He
Sorry.
said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brother-in-law. Ben's brother-in-law. Oh, my goodness, yes.
He said
That's too many words together for me to understand.
In St. Mary's Carbon, the fellow who did all the checking of powders and stuff coming in, did the laboratory work. His mother was a Reicher, married to a Lancel. And he kept her as in old age in his house. James Lancel and his wife Grace were the two people that took care of the old lady.
It's an interesting aside at this point. I'd like to interject that, to me, and nobody talks about it, that St. Mary's Carbon, as an entity, as a private company, still family owned, still in existence, as they originally were incorporated and formed in the 40s, I believe. In any event, there they are. They're the only company that is still by themselves, family owned, not sold, not parceled out, not different name, not national corporations, and they're just quiet down there under the radar.
Yep.
And they are very renowned in the industry for what they make.
Yep.
They make mechanical carbons, they make brushes, they do a lot of stuff down there, very secretive. They're very highly renowned. And they split off into powder metal also, which now I'm understanding might be regressing, but that's another story. We don't need to get into that. Well, I'm serious. It's, we could go down a rabbit hole, but that's.
Well, we're in a big rabbit hole. With regard to powder metal, though, sorry.
For a while, St. Mary's Carbon was the producer of replacement things. And instead of actually producing them, they would buy, for instance, the distributor balls that we made at Spear. They would buy those and resell them as a replacement part. Mm-hmm. The same way with things from Stackpole with the little distributor contact buttons that were for Champion and the Champion spark plug resistors, things like that. Stackpole did all the original equipment, the OEMs, but they were always the person on the other side that, oh yeah, I can supply that for you, but they never made some of it.
When he says distributor, that's automotive distributors. So
Yep.
distributor caps.
Yep.
It did with brushes too.
Yep.
I had, when I was sales manager at Stackpole, we took care of the OEM, the replacement business. Never the two shall meet.
Yep.
You have different pricing structure, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you started out in the factories in St. Mary's, you said, right?
Yep.
And then, but you cut to the chase when you were an over-the-road trucker. That's what you had on the Facebook. That's what I see. You're over-the-road trucker. What was that about?
This
How'd you
is
get into that?
This is my chance to slap at Stackpole.
Slap.
I was sent to Kane as the quality manager for Kane Magnet when they closed out the ceramic business, Ceramag, and industrial resistors. Everything kind of went away. So I got up there and I was working for Dr. Prosky,
Yeah, it's fine.
so that the reporting structure was not through the manufacturing. And,
Was I there at that time, or I came later?
no, you were gone. I don't think you ever worked at Magnet. You worked down in St. Mary's. Well, this was after.
Oh, I ran the cane operation too.
When?
I was the manager of the cane operation and
After
the
Delbert
St. Mary's.
Williams or before?
I can't remember the guy I replaced. It happened when Paul Smithko
Oh, no,
retired. Larry
Okay.
got the management of the carbon, and at that point,
Okay.
he came to me and said, the guy that's running hard and soft magnets, hard and soft ferrites, is leaving. His wife doesn't like it here. He's gone,
Oh,
and they gave me the job. So I
Yep.
I
Yep.
traveled back and forth.
that
I
was
can
that was
remember-
before
I
I
can
moved to
remember
Kane.
seeing you in a meeting or two.
Oh yeah,
You know.
yeah. Well,
So that was,
yeah, well,
So that was,
that was.
yeah.
I had at one time. I had all the resistors, both the industrial resistors and the regular military jobs. I had the Ceramag and not the magnet plant, but resistors with like 3 different locations, with Kane being where they did the finish work, and then later on moved it to Farmville.
Yeah.
Resistors that were the carbon films moved down to Lincolnton, North Carolina. So it was, the whole gamut.
Yeah.
But this was after they closed down the Ceramag, was finished, and they said, well, we want you to go to Kane. So I went to Kane to work. And about the first year it went well. As long as you can keep the quality from reporting directly to manufacturing, you don't have a problem. But at the time, we had the airbag magnets that were the detonator for mines. Well, they were also used as the trigger for the crash protection and getting the airbag to open up. Well, they moved a gentleman from St. Mary's to Kane and put him in charge. And then when he got his feet on the ground, he decided he was going to put quality under manufacturing. And that was the end for me, and I had it right up to here with having to keep crib sheets because you had high reliability things. If you rejected a lot, you didn't dare put it into the system, because if he packed it up and shipped it against your recommendation, you didn't want the company to be responsible, so you're constantly having 2 sets of quality test books. And I finally got fed up, and I went in and I told him exactly where he could shove his job, and I left. Well, then that's when I went back to Pitt, got my degree, and came back out. And I went about 3 years, couldn't find a job. No matter what I did, didn't matter. And one day, I get a reply to one of my resumes. And there's a little carbon plant up at Lewis Run that a certain member of Stackpole's personnel department was running the personnel department up there. And I walked in to the receptionist, and she said, "Oh, Mr. Young will be with you presently." So I go in and sit down in Young's office, and he gets up and goes over and closes the door, goes back and sits behind the desk. He said, "I just called you up here to tell you that I put you on the blacklist. You'll never be hired anywhere in Elk County." So that's my
That was Bruce Young?
yes. And
I always wondered what happened to him.
well, he ended up there, and then one of the caregivers for my wife tells me that he was running the Paris Cleaners operation at Du Bois. Okay, well, he ended up in St. Mary's first running Ceramag because
Well-
you were gone.
Well, there was 2 divisions.
Well, then
He was running,
when.
so that's how that happened.
Well, when you
Meantime,
decided
they were all
you were
trying to
gonna
sell. They were
close-
trying to sell the stuff.
When you decided you were going to close St. Mary's, Sonny went around and pocketed the platinum rhodium thermocouple wire by the roll. And that sort of torqued me off, because that was one of the reasons I didn't want to work for him. I didn't think he was honest, and you wouldn't, if you don't have an honest person to work with, you can't trust him to say what the heck you think, because you'll be the goat. So That was another reason.
I don't know where he is today, do you?
He's dead.
Okay, because he had a drinking problem
Put
too.
it in his nose.
Oh no.
Well, he had a drinking problem too, so.
Well, that's, had a girlfriend, I understand, and family went the other way and whatever.
So getting rid of all this bullshit from the factories. You're on the road. You're an over-the-road trucker.
Oh, fantastic. You're your own boss.
Oh,
You
did
don't
you
have
get bored?
to kiss anybody's ass.
Did you get claustrophobic?
No. Why would you get claustrophobic?
Claustrophobic.
Well, I would. I couldn't do that. What'd you listen to while you were driving?
I made my own discs, and I had a disc player that I'd listen to, and I like country, so it was easy for me, Bar None was really good for me. First couple of years,
What is Barnum?
Bar None is a trucking organization out of Granger, Iowa, that's just north of Des Moines. And at the time I went to work for them, they had about 230 drivers. When I left, there was over 1,000 in 8 years. So it kind of expanded pretty good. But let me spin back a little bit. There's a gentleman who was hired by the state to be the chief instructor at the fire academy in Lewistown. And he was teaching a pump class, and one of his assistants was going to be gone. And he climbs on the phone and says, "Can you come down for a week?" He says, "I need you to help teach pumps and hydraulics." And we had worked together in the past, on weekends and doing other things. So Mr. McKay calls me up, and I go down for the week. Teach pump class back. And then a year or so later is when all this took place, and I got hired by Bar None, and I'm out there running around. And I don't remember exactly where I was, but I got a message on the Qualcomm that says, "Call me." And anytime you see that on the Qualcomm, instead of just giving you the address to go to the next place, you know there's something up. I had no idea what the heck it was, so I get on the phone and I call. Had to go payphone, didn't even have cell phones. Called up on a payphone, they switched me over to this fella, and he said, "I know you." I said, "How in the hell do you know me? You're out there in Granger, Iowa." John Flieger is his name. He said, "Do you remember teaching a pump class at the fire academy?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "I was one of your students." So talk about a small freaking world. Well, that put me in a super position, because I went to him and I said, "Look, give me 2 home locations. That way, if you want to run me West Coast or whatever you want to do, I've got something out in that direction, and I've got my home in Pennsylvania. You can just run me back and forth." So Norman and Teresa were living in Boulder, Montana. Teresa's working in the hospital at Helena, and Norm's going to school at Montana Tech. And so I end up with 2 home locations. I did to Des Moines, to the West Coast, to Seattle, to Portland, to Los Angeles, to San Francisco, wherever, back to Montana, take my 2 days off to get caught back up on my hours, eastbound, New York City, New Jersey, back to St. Mary's, 2 hours, off time. So in the 8 years that I worked for Bar None, I either picked up or delivered or both in every one of the continuous 48 plus Canada.
Wow.
I never had to go into Mexico, but I had to do dropping hooks at Laredo. And that was always the absolute worst possible thing to do, because the trailers never came back with wheels and tires on. They would steal everything off, just enough that they could get it back and park it. And the first thing you had to do was go find a truck stop, find new wheels and new tires, and get the damn trailer put back into usable condition so you could go someplace and pick up.
You once talked to me about delivering military stuff that was kind of secret.
I don't know what it was.
Okay.
It was secret.
Okay, good enough.
I get sent out to the top of the hill on 68, Hagerstown, Maryland. Says, the Qualcomm says, You get off this exit, go to the bottom of the hill, take a right, go out 1/2 mile. There'll be a gated fenced-in area on your left that's an automobile dealer. Pull in there. The lock on the gate number is this, this, and this. So I go in, drop my empty trailer. As soon as I got in there, there's little lights flashing and shit going on. I don't know what the hell's going on. Here comes a guy down. He says, you're going to take that trailer and you're going down to Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Well, I don't know what the hell to expect going to a military fort. I got no idea. Get down to Fort Belvoir, there is not a man on the gate. Go through the gate, follow my directions, go down, find the receiver, go into the receiver, show him what I've got, and it says coffee pots. He says, I can't receive that from you. I said, well, now what the hell? He says, I'll get somebody for you. He says, just go out and wait in your truck. Well, about 10 minutes later, here comes a little Army Jeep. Guy gets out, comes up to my door. He says, come with me. And I walk back to the end of my trailer down the end of this building where the receiver was. He says, you see that building down there with the big roof overhang? I said, he says, I want you to back up to that sliding door that's down there, but you won't be able to back under the overhang. You can only go back, and I'll give you the flag when you have to stop so you don't get too far back. So I go down and I stop the truck and I get out and open the doors, and from floor to ceiling, floor load, no pallets, on the floor, is box after box after box that looks like coffee pot, you know, like a Mr. Coffee or whatever the hell you want to call it. So get my doors tied back and I get back up in the cab and he motions me back. And I stopped where he wanted me to, set the brakes, walks up alongside the truck and he says, I want you to go in your bunk, close your curtains, and I'll come and get you when we're done unloading. And I'm thinking, boy, this is going to be a long damn session. I might as well go to sleep. Well, about 2 minutes later, there's a bang on the ass end of my trailer that made the cab go up and down. They must have dropped the loading dock ramp that it had to be 5 or 6 feet long to hit my trailer from where I was parked. And I can feel the damn heister going in and out, making it go left, right. Holy shit, I didn't expect this. It wasn't 5 minutes. He walks up, beats on my door, says, you're all unloaded, here's your paperwork. You can pull ahead and close everything up. Well, I pulled ahead, closed my doors, and I left. I don't remember where he sent me for my next load, but that was my experience with coffee pots, and I know damn well it wasn't coffee pots.
I know, that's good, it's good.
So,
I know, it's good, it's good.
so that was, upon occasion, you know, things.
So all that driving, all that internet or national experience back and forth, whatever. I mean, what do you think about St. Mary's and its place as a cultural phenomenon, given the manner in which it was formed?
When you
by bullheads
drive,
like us?
Bucky, when you drive, you don't have time to go meet people. If you get in a truck stop, it's all people like you, old stinky truck drivers looking for a shower. You get a shower slip. If you buy 50 gallon of fuel, you get a slip to go use their cleanup place, and you grab a meal and you're out the door because somebody's got you on the list to go somewhere else again. I mean, it just...
So it's good to get back on with people, you know.
Well, you look forward to that.
I kind of want to pick your brain about what you feel about St. Mary's as a cultural establishment, given how it was formed by bullheaded people in Philadelphia and Baltimore who didn't like their bishop and papists, traitors.
They still didn't like the priests that were here. What do you want?
They never do they? Well, they make them play hymns and not folk songs.
They came here because the Catholics were persecuted generally. That was the
That's-
primary reason.
That's the rumor.
And no, it isn't a rumor.
No, I mean,
it actually took place
that's my research.
in the old country. because you were forbidden from buying property if you were a Catholic.
Sure. Sure.
The only thing you could do with your property was you had to follow their regulations where the oldest male got the property. If you didn't have a male in your family, you couldn't pass it down to your daughter. You had to sell it off. You could not get a job for the government. So there were no government jobs to do. The only choice you had was to work for your brother if he was the oldest. You had to spend your life working for him and live in a house on that property. So it was an easy thing to be able to decide, gee, here's a free country and I can get property, and when I'm done, I'll have something at the
So
other
they
end.
came here for property. I've heard that.
So,
They came here for property.
But Catholics were persecuted once you even before
Well,
they were here. If you were here, you
yeah.
were persecuted as a Catholic.
yep,
That and then once they settled here, there were more coming because they said, "Please come settle."
yep,
And the 30 Years' War was a real thing, which we don't think much about.
yep,
The 30 Years' War was a Catholic Protestant Southern Germany crazy experience.
yep. Well, you know, and it wasn't, it's not too far back from 1842 to go back to Napoleon and the things that took place in the 1790s in that time window. And in fact, I have a great, how many times, I don't know, grandmother who was a war bride that came back from France during some kind of a war operation. So, you know, that sort of thing went on over there all the time.
So they came here because they could, and there was opportunity, and it didn't seem to exist in Philadelphia and Baltimore. And that's kind of what they got a good deal here with the Fox Land Company and that whole story of St. Mary's.
Yep.
Yeah, but what you're talking about though is those coming from Germany were coming here because the ones that were already in the United States had decided to move here.
Yep,
They didn't come to the United States to be in St. Mary's. They were already in Baltimore and Philadelphia and
Yep.
didn't like the persecution
Yep.
as Catholics. Came here, made their settlement,
yep.
and then drawing in people from the fatherland.
My grandfather's brother
yeah,
remained
you got a
in
little bit out of whack.
Philadelphia, Eugene Lentz. And if you get to some map may still exist of what he did, but he actually was the person who drew St. Mary's outline like they were in the old country with the wagon hub.
43 minutes, pretty good.
So he's the one that's responsible for that.
He's the one that's responsible, Eugene Lentz.
And then put a railroad right through the middle of it.
Oh, well, that came later on. That came
Where
afterwards.
else?
Yeah, I know.
That was later, but
I know, but
he was mostly, most of the farmers
Yeah.
outlying, and
Yeah.
they're always being attacked.
That was a redemptorist map, right?
They shoot well, but it's the map he's talking about.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of the wagon wheel with the center is that, and they're always being attacked by the
Yep.
invading whoever's
yeah.
coming. The Huns. They ring the bell.
Yep.
And
Everybody
everybody can
gathers
run
together.
to the center of the town and defend themselves.
Yep.
That is the essence of the basic
Right
wagon
down there at
wheel.
Silver Creek too, by the way. Right?
Well, the center,
Joseph
because they
Road,
weren't
yeah.
here,
Yeah, Joseph Road is a
that would be
yeah.
the
because they weren't
I didn't
here,
understand it was a
because they
valley.
weren't here,
Yeah,
they didn't
right.
walk it. They just looked at the map and said, well, we'll put the center right here,
Yep.
which was Silver Creek entering Elk Creek.
Yeah, whistles.
They said that would be the center. And then once they started moving here and kind of cutting around, they said, well, that's not going to work. And then
Big
it
farm.
ended up where it is today. So that was the thing with that wagon wheel design. It was all comes from Europe. And how do you defend yourselves when you're being attacked? Run to the center of town, form your circle. That's documented.
Wow. So what do you think of St. Mary's, Bill? We're going to wrap this up, this video portion. There's a lot of good stuff going on here. I mean, there's a lot
St. Mary's.
of stuff. What do you think?
That's a huge.
I've asked that several times. What do you think of us as a unique community and a place to live, given and given the situation that we're experiencing with the immigrants from Springfield, Ohio? And do you think possibly that we could be flooded with immigrants to work at our powder metal companies, or what do you
Now
think?
he wants you to go political.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not
yeah.
political. It's not, there's nothing
It's
politics in that.
absolutely political.
It's not political.
Let me approach this from a different standpoint, because I've got a granddaughter who wants to pack up and move and is trying to talk her husband into doing a North Carolina thing. And,
What do you mean North Carolina?
well, she wants to move there,
Yeah,
okay?
that's a hot spot.
That's pretty wet right now.
Well,
What's that guy?
I had a rude
wasn't a couple of
awakening
days
when I
ago.
was a young person. Red and I got married, and we had one baby here, and I was working for Carbon City Products, and I don't know that I was being used, but I was sort of. If somebody didn't do the calculations for densities and part sizes and everything on the day shift, there wasn't anybody on the afternoon shift to do it. So I was being asked by my foreman to go in and sit down in Morris Haynes' desk and calculate out part weights so they could get presses set up and sizes and things like that. And I came home one day and said to her, "This is crazy. As I'm working my ass off, I'm doing all this engineering work and everything, and I'm making $2.15 an hour. I'm going to look around for something else to do." And so I ran resumes out, and I get a reply from General Dynamics Corporation at Rochester. And short form is, I go up, stayed with Tom Slater, whose father was Cedric, the plumber, with Dewey Moyer. I stayed there with him for 2 weeks until I got everything squared away working in the plant. I found an apartment, came back, got my wife, moved up there. Well, long story short, it turned out to be a couple of years, and we were in the middle of the riots in Rochester, looting and burning and stealing and everything. And I sat on the steps to our apartment. We lived over a drugstore, 3 other apartments plus ours. I sat there the whole night with a shotgun across my knees. When we got done with that, I went back to work. Wasn't allowed to go to work until Tuesday. I was working on a moving line making MRC 107 backpack radios for the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. Get down there, and I had a black expediter, Bill Tyrrell. And he says, "I'll see you at 10 o'clock like we usually got our coffee, and give me the list of what you need, and I'll try to get you expedited for whatever you're missing on the line. And when you're doing that, you've got 20 girls, 25 girls in a row, and everybody does certain soldering and putting parts in, and it's coming down to the end of the line." So we get together for our coffee on Tuesday morning, and after he gets all his list and everything done, I said, "Bill, what the hell's going on down there in Joseph Avenue?" He said, "Hell, man, you better be able to edit this."
I'll edit that.
So you understand, that I have a different view of what's on the outside, because I saw that stuff, and Red and I got our heads together and said, we are not raising our children under these conditions. I mean, we had it too nice in comparison to the rest of the world, and it was a slap in the face and an education instantly.
Oh, I've got 2 years into the DC ghetto.
Yep.
2 years in El Salvador. I've been around.
Yep. And it's not
I
the
like to hear
people's
that
fault or the
stuff.
children's fault or even the young people's fault that are doing the rioting. They're just not taught any better. What the heck do you do?
yeah.
You give it a shot and it doesn't work because it's institutionalized that I'm the enemy because of the color of my skin, and they want to feel my stab wounds. Yeah, well, we can go there.
Now, are you anybody here aware of the study that was done in the state of Pennsylvania on the various communities? I think it was sponsored by Harvard University. They did a study, and they found that St. Mary's, just behind Williamsport, had the highest percentage of personnel in industrial jobs, had the highest percentage of persons in the middle class.
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware of that study? Have you heard that?
No,
Yeah.
but I was aware that we are a wealth in the state.
And one of
because,
the, I remember one of the governors of Pennsylvania came here, saying, how the hell do you do that? How do you get so many people, in a state that's basically agricultural, total,
Yeah.
so involved in industry? And I think part of it is the German extraction and the basic background.
Yep.
And the people here they kind of stay, and we've got that work ethic and that ability.
And the Benedictine approach to education.
Well,
And
yeah,
that's still at the public school. That didn't disappear with the Smith-Garback. It did not.
And I think that's another key issue here too. I really do. Yeah. So, we are outstanding in that sense when you look at the total state. We're different.
It can be broken
And
down to
we
the
were, what, carbon?
and the
Yeah, carbon center of the world, right?
But it can be broken down to the carbon and then the expansion into the multiple polymer.
Well, we got to talk about trees. We got to talk about the trees are gone. Then we got to talk about there wasn't enough coal. There wasn't any oil.
I want to make,
You're talking
I wanna make
innovation
one more
based upon
point here
scarcity
before we go off somewhere else. In my generation of going through middle school and high school, we had people in our science departments who were taken all summer long and thrown into positions within the carbon industry. And when they came back, they modified their teaching, physics, chemistry, whatever, so that you got enough information that you could run with it if you went from high school right into the industry. If you had to go here or there, you could understand what was going on.
And those industries had apprentice programs too.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, let's consider Dave Stork right
machinist
now.
program was phenomenal at Stackpole.
I know.
Well, Tom,
I know. And that all went. All the
Yep.
accountants took care
Okay,
of that.
consider Dave Stork from Keystone, who's now working 3-4 days a week at Public teaching physics. I don't know if you know Dave Stork from Keystone.
Yeah.
He comes to our book club. He's taking that expertise, and he's in his 70s. He doesn't have to lift a finger.
He's damn near 80, and we have breakfast together on a regular basis at Rosie's. He and I have had this discussion about what he's been teaching and how it's going, and yeah,
Would he be exemplifying what you were talking about?
that's exactly what we're talking about. Keystone put Mallison in that school, teaching at night for Keystone people.
Jim?
Those kind of things were done here all the time, trying to educate. And it stood me in good stead. I have absolutely nothing to complain
You had
about.
Am and Bill Creek in like a cycle loop between the schools and the factories, yes. And we had the tech prep program, which was quite nice, but too bad the Williams ran it and didn't have the connection to St. Mary's that was necessary to really, really make that thing work.
Well,
I think it's a good time. I'm going to shut the cameras off now. Is there anything else you want to say in closing, Bill?
no.
There's a lot of material here that I'm going to edit, and it's going to be
Whatever you want to
snippets.
do, Bucky, it's up to you. You just go do whatever you want to
Guten
do.
Nacht, right?
Gute Nacht, Freunde. Es wird Zeit für mich zu gehen.
It's about genug. It is about enough.
Was ist Dagnu Hagensetter? Dauert einen Bier hier und ein letztes Glas im Stehen. Auf Wiedersehen.